Hi there and welcome back to my channel. This is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video we're discussing Downpour, written by Christopher Hawkins. It's a horror. It's what I think of as isolation horror, if that's a subgenre of horror. So it's about this time a family in a house in a rural area, and they're isolated from everywhere else because of what's happening in this book. And what's happening is rain. So rain's falling, and it's strange rain. It's causing different things going on. So rain as a driver for a horror is not a unique idea now. It's becoming a bit cliche, I think, in modern times anyway. But there is a bit of a tweak in this book that makes it more interesting. So the tweak is that the rain has a different kind of element to it that makes hiding indoors not a permanent solution. So people eventually will have to go outside and seek safety elsewhere if they can. That's the tweak, and I think it adds something else to this book. Scott is the narrator of this story, and it's all about his point of view. And he lives in this rural area on this property, I think it's about 12 acres or something, with his wife and 2 kids. And the first part of this book is all an intro about them, and that goes on for a bit of time in this story before the rain occurs. In some ways I think it can be seen as a bit long, that intro in this story with all the characters, but in other ways it gives us more information about them and also about their dog. That's important because their dog plays an important role in the story in certain elements after the rain starts falling. So that build-up is okay in some ways, but a bit lengthy in other ways. One of the things you'll find in this story that's told time and time again is that Scott's haunted by memories of his childhood. That's amplified because his family now live in his childhood home. So how can he get away from these memories he has? And not happy memories either. So he's carrying that with him all through his life, it seems. And it makes him think about these memories time and time again when this rain starts falling. And what that does, it pulls you out of the atmosphere that's been created in the book because of the rain. The atmosphere is not that strong anyway. So for me reading this, I was just pulled out of the story so many times because it kept repeating about his childhood memories, and it seemed to be the same memories over and over again. I think if you're going to do that for a character, give them history, make it a bit briefer. It doesn't have to be repeated in the story. What the author's trying to do with the rain is make it this big unknown. And in some cases, the unknown can be terrifying. But in this case, not so much. I mean, the rain is unknown in this book. No one knows where it came from. No one knows what caused it, how long it will be there for. People just slowly find out, or Scott does and his family does, they slowly find out that it's causing negative effects on things. That's all. There are scant scenes where there's bits of information coming in from the outside world, but it's very limited and not very detailed. And it's in the form of YouTube videos in some cases, and also little bits on TV. Then that's forgotten about very quickly, I think. It doesn't cause many reactions in the characters either. There's slight reactions from them at the very moment, then it's forgotten about. So that happens in this book a lot, I think, where reactions and feelings about what's going on with the rain in the current narrative is just forgotten about too easily. And it seems to be focused a lot of the time on Scott's feelings on his childhood, his memories, about that, how that affects him now more than the rain. There are some big moments in the story, so they are there. I won't go into what they are, I don't want to spoil them, but they do have big impacts in the story. So when you read them, they'll be shocking, there'll be big moments, but what happens is after those big moments, it feels like it's forgotten about very quickly. And it starts to go back into these childhood memories. It starts to go back into the characters just sitting around in the house, wondering about the rain, moving from spot to spot. There's not much feeling and emotion driven from those big moments. So those big moments, while they're impactful, there needs to be those reactions from the characters. The consequence of those moments, those big impactful moments, need to have bigger consequences in the overall story. So the book in general, the atmosphere of the book, the author's trying to build that up. In some ways it builds up okay. When the rain first hits, it's quite, impactful because it's strange, it's alien. There's strange rains falling and these strange clouds that have a strange colour to them, and people are wondering what's going on. There's a bit of atmosphere in that, but not too much. And also, the atmosphere kind of just gets downplayed a bit because there's no urgency in the book. Scott and his family and just indoors. There's no urgency for them to run, try to find shelter elsewhere, especially with the tweak, what's going on with the rain, that makes them realise, staying indoors is not a permanent solution. But there's no urgency to get out. And I found that lack of urgency also decreased the atmosphere in the story for me. There are some twists in the book, but they're all at the end. Now, I'm not a big fan of books that keep twists to the end and not have them through the book. I prefer twists all the way through the book because twists drive consequences. They drive changes in narrative and changes in character reactions and things like that. So if you're going to have twists, make them all through the book. That's my personal preference. But at the end of this book, there are some twists. But one twist is wasted, I think, because it has no consequence on the rest of the story. I think it's there for the author to say, look, I'm clever, I put a twist there that gives you some sort of revelation about a certain thing that's thought about through the book. That's why it's there. But for a twist, what's the consequence of that? There's nothing in the story that's driven from that twist. So I think just bring it into earlier parts of the story and have some consequences from that moment, not put it to the end. Because at the end, with no consequence, it's a wasted twist and shouldn't be there in the first place. The characters in this book are written well enough. There are some things about them I didn't like that much, like Scott's repetitive thoughts about his childhood memories. That was just too many times in the story. But other characters are fairly strong in this story. There are a couple of characters there that feel a little bit cliche, but they're written well into the story, so that's okay. So character-wise, this story is pretty strong. Scott is the main character and narrator in this story. His character is a bit hit and miss for me. What I did like about his character is the fact that sometimes his actions and thoughts are questionable. We wonder, is he acting out of the best interest of himself or his whole family? That's what I thought in certain moments in this story, and that was well done, I think, because it makes him feel a little bit flawed, more human. It makes you wonder what his true motivation is at certain times in this story. What I didn't like about this character is the repetitive thoughts about his childhood memories, those haunting memories he has. It just kept pulling me away from the main storyline. So I'd rather that to be balanced a bit differently in his character, but in some ways he was really good as a character in this book. Dana is Scott's wife in the story. I'm not sure what the author was going for with this character. She's there to drive certain conflicts, I think, between Scott and Dana in the book. And she does that quite well. So if that's the reason, that's a big tick. And she certainly shows different things in the story about herself. She's got certain issues she's working through, and she's trying to force those issues at the moment with Scott. Even when the rain starts falling and things start feeling strange, she's trying to force certain issues, certain discussions between the two characters. But I'm not sure if the author's trying to make us feel sympathy for Dana, because I didn't feel sympathy for her at all. So overall, I think she's okay as a character. She's got purposes, I think, in the story, and if it's the purposes I'm thinking of, then big ticks for the character. But I didn't feel any sympathy for her at all in this book. Jasper is the teenage son in the book, and he's a great character. I think he's so well written, he feels like a real teenager. His reactions, his dialogue, the way he's described in the story, things he does, it feels like a real teenager in the book. Also, just how impetuous he is also feels like a teenager. Everything about him screams teenager, and not all authors can create teenagers that feel so real. So I think Jasper works really well in this story. This story works well enough for an isolation type horror. I think the atmosphere could have been stronger. I think there are certain moments in this book that could have been a bit darker, a bit more powerful. But overall, it's an okay story, and I enjoyed the concept of the story. I rated it a 3 out of 5. I think using brain as a driver of evil, of the horror, is a bit cliche now, but that tweak in it made it really interesting. And I just needed something in that tweak to make it more atmospheric, more urgency with the characters, because the tweak was interesting and a great element in the story, but didn't really drive any urgency in the story as well. On my channel, I review many horrors. If you enjoy horror, check out my channel and subscribe. On the screen now is a link to a video for another book I'm sure you'll enjoy.